They don't pay us to think. They pay us to know. We know we can beat them. There's no excuses why we shouldn't win the game. Period. W is on 3, man. Let's go. W on 3. 1, 2, 3. W.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sister. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report Live. 15 NFL weeks in the books. 2 weeks left. 2 games left. So I've titled tonight's Redskins Report Live, 2 games left. What's next? We get the 20-15 win over the Arizona Cardinals. Pretty much spoke about that on the Redskins Rapid React yesterday. So I'm not really going to elaborate too much on the Arizona Cardinals win. It was good to get a win, as I said on the R3 yesterday. It was good to see the fellas perform well and come out with a sense of urgency for Jay Gruden. It was nice to see some of the younger players play well. Kendall Fuller, among a lot of guys that stepped up yesterday. None bigger, obviously, than Anthony Lanier, but Nick Vigil, another guy that I thought played really well yesterday. So it was good to see the young guys get in there and perform well and give themselves a shot to make the team next year. You know, a guy like Anthony Lanier, I think, is going to make this team, but he may have a bigger role after seeing some of the things he was capable of doing yesterday. And again, it was the Arizona Cardinals. They're just as banged up as we are. They're not a good football team, but they're not a good football team because of the injuries. So they're similar to us in that their season has been derailed essentially because of injuries, and so they were a shell of themselves, and you saw that in the game. So I don't really want to talk about that game too much. We got the Denver Broncos coming up in Week 16 at home, our final home game of the season. Again, I'm looking to try to get another W. It'd be nice to finish up the season on a 3-game winning streak, get to 8-8, have another non-losing season. That'd be 3 straight, something that this franchise hasn't done in quite some time, probably since the late 80s, early 90s. So it'd be great to be able to say, hey, we haven't had a losing record in DC in the last 3 years. That'd be great to be able to say. But again, it's a consolation prize that really no one cares about, but few of us. I would really like the Redskins to finish up 8-8 this season and be able to say, hey, we were 8-8. Let's see if we can build upon that next year and get to 10 wins, get to 11 wins. But again, a lot of things in this offseason have to take place, none bigger than the quarterback position and the decision that they make with Kirk Cousins. That's going to shape and mold the way we view this team for the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years to come, because don't know what you're going to do at that position, don't know how you're going to handle that position, and then we got other positions that we need to worry about, and that's what I want to talk about a lot tonight. And again, after I finish rambling, I'm going to open up the phone lines to you guys. Twitter's going to be open like it was last week. We're not doing the whole 4-hour long marathon. That's not what this show. It's going to be closer to our normal Redskins report length, about an hour and 30 minutes or so. And I'm going to open up the phone lines, let you guys kind of talk about a couple questions that I'm going to pose. And if you have something else you want to bring to the forefront, by all means, please have at it. But Twitter will be open. The discussion chat, if we get there, again, once I open up the phone lines, and if it's lit, then we probably won't even get to the chat discussion. But Twitter will be available, as well as the phone lines will be open. And again, if we get to the YouTube chat discussion, I will definitely read comments off of there as well. But before we get to any of that, I want to pose the question to you guys. What do you think is the biggest need this offseason? All right. I asked this because watching the game on Sunday versus the Arizona Cardinals, it really dawned on me that, and it's not like I didn't realize this before, but I kind of pushed it, kind of to the back of the line, like, yeah, we can get by. We don't really, it's not a big problem, but I'm looking at the receiver position, and we were so bad, and I get it. One of the biggest losses we've had this year that we haven't really talked about a lot, because after the devastating loss of the New Orleans game, it pretty much put our season in peril, you know. And I'd already said that the season was over after we lost to Minnesota, but the loss at New Orleans, because of the nature of how it took place and transpired, I think that really damaged all of our psyches as fans, and I think it really took a toll on the players, more so than the fans itself. I think the players literally quit after that game mentally, and you saw a lot of mistakes versus the Cowboys, punt return, 3 turnovers. It was terrible, you know. And then the next week after that versus the Chargers, I mean, it was a total mental checkout. So it was good to see the fellas show up this week and give maximum effort back at home versus the Cardinals and get a win. That being said, the offense was abysmal. And it hasn't been right since Chris Thompson went down in that Saints game. And I don't think we talked enough about his injury and the impact it's had on this offense, because, look, we've been without Jordan Reed for the vast majority of this season, but we've survived. Terrell Pryor hasn't been a factor for this team all season long, but we've survived. The receiver position hasn't been great for us this season, but we've survived. Chris Thompson got injured, and we haven't survived, okay? We have regressed each and every single week since his injury. The Giants game on Thanksgiving, a lot of us thought, okay, well, the Giants game was just 4 days after the Saints debacle, and so quick turnaround, no Chris Thompson, don't have a chance to game plan for life without him. That's why we were so bad. But 10 days before the Cowboys game, and you're going to have plenty of time to game plan for the Cowboys and figure out how to offset the injury of Chris Thompson. Well, we never circumvent that injury. Okay, his injury to me has had the biggest impact on this offense. We can't convert third downs. The check downs don't even look the same. The creativity from out of the backfield is gone. We're not the same efficient team in the red zone anymore. Everything that we were able to do with Chris Thompson in the backfield is now lost. And because of that, now the receiver position, or lack thereof, of the production is starting to show even more so, because remember, Chris Thompson was our leading receiver. So it was okay that the receivers were underperforming, because Chris Thompson was picking up the slack for those guys. Now that he's gone, and you're looking at this team, and I literally sat down on Sunday watching that game versus Arizona, and I said, man, our receivers are bad. We don't have a number 1, and at this point, I'm questioning if we even have a number 2 receiver. I don't know if that guy exists. We have a number 3. Jamison Crowder is a good slot receiver in this league. Despite the drops on punts and his now seemingly really huge problem of fumbling the football, which he did again against Arizona. Luckily enough for him, they called him down, but I'm not sure if he was down or not. Either way, he's still a hell of a slot receiver, and he's the best we've got right now. I don't know if there's another viable option after Jamison Crowder now. You know, Ryan Grant's nice, but he's Ryan Grant. You know, there's only so much you can get from Ryan Grant. Crowder is the best we've got, and then I guess the next step below would be Grant. And look, I'm going to reserve judgment on Josh Doctson, because I think the guy's got talent. You know how I feel about Josh Doctson and what I think he brings to the table and what kind of an asset he can be to this team. But that being said, I just don't see the playmaking ability that I thought we were going to get with a first-round pick out of TCU and Josh Doctson. I just don't see that guy right now, and I don't know if that's a lack of confidence. I don't know what it is. But there was another pass in the game this past week. It was high. Granted, it was high, but it was late in the ball game. We needed a play to be made, and you want your first-round pick receiver to go up and make a catch. Was it the easiest catch to make? No. Was the Chiefs' catch the easiest to make? No. But that's what you're looking for from your first-round pick. That ball went right through his hands, and the Chiefs' ball came out of his grasp, and we lost that game. And I'm just looking for him to make some plays like he did against the Cowboys in the end zone. I want him to climb the ladder and go get the football, and I'm just not seeing that from him. So right now, I look at the receiver position, I'm like, it's a pretty big damn need. I've pushed it to the back, and I still don't have that one superseding quarterback if Kirk isn't back, which I think is a realistic possibility. The running back position, I like Samaje Perine. I don't love him. He's not a game-changing back. I want one of those guys. And pass rusher, okay? Nose tackle, if you're going to keep this 3-4 defense and this charade up, you need a nose tackle. So, I mean, it still doesn't supersede those needs. What do we do in free agency? Do we re-sign some of our own? I mean, if Spencer Long is gone, if Sean Laval is gone, if Ty Nsekhe is gone, then all of a sudden you've got a glaring need on the offensive line. So there are other issues that may arise after free agency hits that will tell the story of this football team as to what we will be looking to do come draft time. But I'm going to ask you, I'm going to pose the question to you guys out there. What's the biggest need you see for this football team in the offseason? Let's go with the assumption. Let's go with the assumption that Kirk Cousins is back. And that's one that I don't like to make because I don't think he's going to be back. But I don't want to hear quarterback because obviously if Kirk Cousins isn't back, then that trumps everything. That goes to the top of the list. And we understand that. That's universal amongst us all. So I don't want to take that one into consideration right now. Let's put quarterback aside. All right. What's our biggest need? If quarterback isn't the biggest need, what then becomes our de facto #1 biggest need in the offseason? Receivers starting to scare the hell out of me. I'm not going to lie to you. And I've got a couple of sources that I trust that I've listened talk about some free agent receivers that I had my eye on. We had our eyes on. I've listened to some guys talk that I trust that have said, Jarvis Landry, not going anywhere. Miami's not going to let him leave that building. Samuel Watkins in Los Angeles with the Rams, they're prepared to use the franchise tag on him if necessary, if they can't reach a long-term deal with him. There was one more free agent wide receiver that we all thought, well, hey, he'd make a good Redskin. He'd be a guy that we'd look at. And from all reports, he's not going anywhere either. That team isn't allowing him to leave. So all of a sudden, the free agent crop of receivers that looked so plentiful, not looking so good. And generally in this league, that's what happens to receivers is if you got a good one, like an Antonio Brown, you hold on to your guy. Julio Jones, those types of guys, they don't generally change teams. It's the secondary guys. It's the Reggie Waynes. Those are the guys that, if you've got a Batman and Robin's looking to get paid like Batman, then that's when you tell Robin, hit the streets. Go find you some Batman money elsewhere. You won't get it here. So we'll see what happens in free agency. But it's not looking too good in terms of finding a guy to come in and fill our #1 wide receiver void that we have. And I'm looking at the draft, and I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not that impressed with the crop of receivers coming out. I don't see one surefire, can't-miss prospect in the draft as a receiver. And again, I got to watch them a lot closely, more closely than I have. I haven't, really analyzed any of these guys, whether it's the Sutton kid from SMU, Calvin Ridley from Alabama, Equanimous St. Brown from Notre Dame. I mean, these are some of the names that come to my mind. But I don't, a lot of people are talking about this James Washington guy. I'm not that sold on him. So, I mean, it's not going to be the best wide receiver draft class, and we're in desperate need of something. I don't know exactly what it is, but we need something. Looking at those receivers, they couldn't separate. They weren't winning. And Kirk didn't have a lot of places to go with the football, and we can't convert on third downs because guys aren't winning on third down. And so it's becoming a problem. And I know when Jordan Reed comes back, that's going to help. When Chris Thompson comes back, that's also going to help. But make no mistake about it. We need receivers that can win. And I'm watching Josh Doctson run routes. He's running the most ordinary routes I've ever seen of a guy that is a first-round pick. I mean, these routes are pedestrian. He's rolling some of these outcuts, and he's rolling some of these in-cuts, and everything it's rounded and nothing sharp. He's not giving a lot of head movement. Everything looks sort of ho-hum, sort of meh with Josh Doctson. And so that's part of the reason he's not separating, because he's not giving you the the facade of, hey, I might be running a goal or I might be running a corner route. There's no head fake. There's no shoulder. It's just, hey, I'm going to the post. I'm going to the post. You coming? Yeah, well, damn right the corner's coming. If you tell them you're going straight to the post, there's no fake. There's no nothing. There's no double stick. There's no single. There's not even a single stick. It's just, I'm rolling it up to the post. Catch me if you can. Well, you're not that damn fast. That's number one. Number two, corners in this league are very quick, and if you don't give them something to chew on, just going to run and stay in your hip pocket. And so, and Josh Doctson doesn't strike me as a guy that's making a bunch of tough contested catches. So, I'm looking around and I'm saying, man, we could use another receiver or two on this roster. Robert Davis, the guy we drafted out of Georgia State, not the answer. I told you that when we drafted him, and I'm convinced of that. And maybe he'll grow into something. I'm not sold on him. He's a raw wide receiver that, to me, doesn't run routes very well, and he's a build-up speed guy. So that speed that you see from him isn't speed that I think is going to concern anybody because he's got to build that speed up. I'm not in love with the receiver position right now for this Redskins football team moving forward. So that's starting to move up the list of items that we're going to need in the offseason. Again, I don't put that ahead of quarterback, obviously, if Kirk should depart. I don't put it ahead of running back. I don't put it ahead of pass rusher. I don't put it ahead of offensive line if we don't re-sign some of our own. I don't put it ahead of linebacker per se, you know, but it might trump linebacker. After watching Sunday's game, I'm not going to lie to you, and I shudder to think what's going to happen next week against Denver with their trio of cornerbacks. They're going to shut our receivers down and out, and I feel bad for Kirk because he's not going to have anywhere to go with the football next week versus the Denver Broncos. You know, the Broncos stink on offense, just like we do. But their defense is still good enough to shut our damn receivers down and take them out of the game. And next week could be a 13-10 contest. The first to 13 might win the game. It could get ugly next week between two bad offenses and two defenses that may be the strong suits of both of their respective teams. And if our defense is the strong suit of our team, that's not saying a whole hell of a lot come next week. So, we'll see. I also want to mention this, and then we'll get to the phone lines. We've got the Redskins have a hearing coming up with Scott McCloughan, as he's now looking to recoup the money that he's owed. He believes he's owed due to wrongful termination. And so, obviously, when you fire someone, especially in the NFL, not always is this the case in all walks of life, but in the NFL particularly, when you fire someone, coach, general manager, whomever, this is good for everyone except players. When you fire someone, they're still owed their money for the duration of their contract. So let's say you sign fill in the blank to a 5-year deal as a head coach, because I don't want to put Jay's name in there because I don't want Jay to get fired. I don't want to speak that into existence. Well, let's just say we go with XYC coach. So you hire X coach and you sign him to a 5-year deal. And in the middle of the 3rd season, you think he's doing a terrible job. You were thinking about firing him before the season started. You said, I'm going to give him another year. And this year isn't going well either, and you decide to fire him at the midpoint of the season. He's still due money for the 4th and the 5th year of his contract. You know, like that just doesn't go away. He still owed his money because you fired him. He didn't quit. So McCloughan is saying, look, I didn't quit. You fired me. And normally under the pretense of the way he was fired, and because they feel like he was detrimental to them with his behavior on the job and with his whole situation with his drinking, they felt like they had to terminate him because of the detriment that he was having to the organization. So they feel like, nope, we don't owe you anything. You don't get paid because we fired you with cause. All right? He's saying, nope, there's no cause. You did this on your own. I want my money. So And one thing about Dan Snyder, you say what you want. And I know a lot of people don't like Dan Snyder as an owner. They think he's a terrible owner. I think Dan Snyder's always had, a lot of people think, oh, he's only about the money, yada, yada, yada. I'm not getting into that discussion with you because I don't know the man personally, so I can't vouch for him. But I can tell you this much. He's always had the Redskins' best interest at heart when he makes decisions. Now, are they the right decisions? A lot of the times, they weren't in the past. We asked for him to sit back and let football guys handle the football operations, and he tried that. And he's done that for the last decade. We haven't heard from Daniel Snyder. He hasn't made any rash decisions in over a decade. He hasn't been in the forefront. Would you rather us have an owner like Jerry Jones or the late, great Al Davis, or would you rather have an owner like Daniel Snyder that's in the background? You don't hear him talk. He doesn't do a ton of interviews. You don't hear him out here in the forefront of everything, telling people what we're going to do. And I'd much rather have him be exactly the way that he is. And I know he wants to win. He's a fan at heart just like us. That's why he bought the team, because he could remember growing up, going to Redskins games. He wants this team to return to the glory days, which is why he thought that he could come in when he first bought the team back in '99, start throwing money around and buying players and buying a Super Bowl. And it doesn't work that way. And it took him a while, but he figured it out. And I can tell you this much. Rich people, the one thing they hate doing is losing money. The only thing that rich people love more than their families, unless religion is up there, is money, more money. It's amazing. You would think that, hey, they got enough money. No, rich people don't like to lose money. They never want to run out of it. So one thing I can tell you Daniel Snyder isn't a fan of is wasting money. That's why you don't see him fire a bunch of coaches. That's why they tried to push Jim Zorn to quit, and Jim Zorn wouldn't do it. It's why they held on to Shanahan for as long as they did, because he had I want to say Shanahan had a 4 or 5 year deal. And he was in the 3rd year of his deal, and they really didn't want to get rid of him. But that was it's either him or me type of situation. They chose the quarterback, which turned out to be the wrong move. But in any event, he didn't like giving away free money. And if they got to pay Scott McCloughan, I don't think he's going to be really happy with that. And I thought that if this season went to hell in a handbasket and McCloughan, because it's so hard to prove that someone was fired with cause. It's very hard to prove that. So, in my mind, I was thinking if this season finished up really bad and then the Redskins lost their case against Scott McCloughan and the ownership was due to pay him whatever was left on his contract, that could be a grounds for Daniel Snyder to say, you know what, Bruce, it's time for you to go. Now that the season, I think, is going to finish up in a relative positive light, a relatively positive light. We're going to see. But I like our chances versus the Giants for sure in Week 17. We just won in Week 15. So even if you don't beat Denver this week, finishing with wins in 2 out of your final 3 games, that's a positive finish for a team that's had a myriad of injuries. I don't see Bruce going anywhere. I don't see Jay going anywhere. I think everything's going to pretty much stay status quo. That's my thought process. But we'll see how that proceeding turns out, because if in fact, and you know, that was Bruce's hire, Dan Snyder could be a little upset about having to spend some money that he didn't plan on having to spend on a guy that's no longer here helping his football team. And that was Bruce's guy. Just like Jay Gruden is Bruce's guy. So, we're going to see. But back to the topic of discussion at hand. What is the biggest need of this football team? Right now, I haven't moved off the spot. For me, and again, for those of you just getting here, we're taking quarterback out of the discussion. Put that aside. Obviously, if Kirk isn't back, that goes to the top of the list. But we're taking that and we're removing it from this conversation. I want to know, what is the single biggest need of this football team going into the offseason? And again, free agency is going to determine what happens in the draft, which is why I really don't want to talk about what this team is going to do in the draft quite yet. Just because I don't know what's going to be out there in free agency. I don't know who's going to do what. And I don't know how this team is going to approach free agency. Obviously, with the Kirk situation looming over their heads, that's going to impact how they approach free agency. You know, if they decide to franchise Kirk, that's $34 million. That's a good chunk of your salary cap gone to one player. Because Kirk is signing that. He'd be a fool not to. Because $34 million for 1 year, I mean, some guys don't make that in their entire careers. He has a chance to make that in 1 year. You think he's not going to sign that deal? And then at that point, you're looking at 20, 24, and 34. So you're talking 58, 70, basically $8 million in 3 years for Kirk Cousins. Essentially. Obviously, taxes come out of that, and it's substantially less. But you're still talking about millions, not thousands, millions. All right? You cut out half of that. Let's say 10 of the 20, or let's call it, because it's not 50%. So let's call it 12 of that 20, 16 of that 24, and of the 34, he'd get, let's say, 20 of that after taxes. 36, you're talking about $48 million, roughly, in 3 years. After taxes. That's take-home money. All right? That's a lot of cheese, man. That's a lot of bread. A lot of bread to put cheese on. Okay? So, he'd be a fool to turn that down. And then he would hit free agency the year after that. And then hit the bank again. In that time, he would sign for what would probably be well over $100 million guaranteed. So, again, Kirk's winning. He's not losing here. He's winning. So, obviously, Kirk's situation contractually will go a long way in determining what the Redskins will be able to do this offseason. But I want to know what you view as this team's biggest need on the field, not off the field. Okay? On the field. From a player standpoint. Not schematically. Just from a player standpoint. What is this team's biggest need? I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines. So if you want to call in, there's the number right there. I'm going to take to Twitter because I believe there is a few tweets that have been sent in already. So I want to go ahead and take a look at those. And we will check that out. Okay, so it looks like the Pro Bowl players have been announced. I want to see if any Redskins made it. The only guy that I really care about making it this year is Kendall Fuller. And I don't think he's going to make it, but he should. Let's see what we got. Trent Williams made it, which we knew that's a foregone conclusion. Even with his injury, he deserved to go. Brandon Sheriff made it for the second consecutive year. So it's what we expected from our team, pretty much. Let's see. Ryan Kerrigan made it. Go figure. Yeah, he didn't make it as a corner, even though, and normally they should have a specific slot for slot corners. They don't. They just pick the best corners, and so you're getting a bunch of starting corners: Xavier Rhodes, Patrick Peterson, Marshawn Lattimore, Darius Slade. These are all boundary corners. I'd love to see them set aside 2 slots for slot corners, or at least one, but they don't do that. So he didn't get in, which is a shame. And he might ultimately go because someone doesn't want to go or someone's injured. But he deserves to be there, no doubt about that. But in any event, the Redskins have 3 Pro Bowlers this year, and it's the same 3 that they generally get every year. No Kirk Cousins this year like last year, but it's Ryan Kerrigan, Trent Williams, Brandon Sheriff. So there you have it. Redskins have 3 Pro Bowlers this year. not that much of a surprise. I really would have loved to have seen Kendall Fuller make it, though. He deserves to go, and ultimately he may go when it's all said and done. We'll see what happens, but these lists that when they first come out tend to fluctuate because guys simply don't want to go, or they claim that they're want to heal up injuries. They're injured, so we'll see how that goes. But let's go to Twitter, shall we? And I know somebody just called in. I wanted to finish my statement before I took a call. So if you're out there, you call back, and I will pick it up. But let's get to Twitter. Make sure you're using the hashtag LouieTLive if you want your tweet to be read. Use the hashtag LouieTLive. Let's go to Twitter and see what's out there. All right. Got our first call of the night. So we'll go ahead and take that. You're on the Redskins Report live with your man Louie T. Who am I speaking with?
Man, you're speaking with Protect Sports, man, a.k.a. Tones, man. What's going on?
What's going on, Tones?
Ain't nothing, man. Chilling. Ain't what I'm saying. Well, how about you?
Hey, likewise. Preaching to the fam, man. You know what it is.
You already know what time it is, man. He 2 seconds for my headphones in. I can hear me for you. Yeah. All right. So you asked what's the biggest need for the team, right?
Correct.
Okay. I can't give a specific biggest need.
Okay.
But I got a two-way tie. Well, actually, the biggest need is pass rush. We need a legit number one, getting pass rusher who is not like Brian Ferry, who gets a whole bunch of effort stats. I want a guy who can get off the snap, get an offensive lineman, have a repertoire moves, or spin, or cut inside, cut outside, be rush, has a repertoire of moves who can get to the quarterback at almost all times. He can be the best tackles in football at all times. And the quarterback snaps the ball, and oh crap, there you go, snap. I want that kind of guy. That's the biggest thing we need. Like, I want quarterbacks to be scared. I want QB to be like, oh, there you go right there. Let me chip a running back over here or something. I don't want to get hit. I want that kind of pass rusher. Then maybe a 1B need will probably be inside linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
When we wrong, it keeps me on these times Zach Brown. I mean, that's how I look at it. If we don't these times Zach, that's also a possibility. We're going to definitely need an inside linebacker, but definitely pass rush. I know people say defensive lineman in general, but when we get healthy, when we get Jonathan Allen back, Phil Taylor, a whole bunch of other players that we lost during the preseason and early in the regular season, I don't think that defensive line will be the biggest need like people think it is. It's a need because we're hurt.
Yeah, but, I think we do need a nose tackle, though.
Yeah.
I liked what Phil Taylor was doing, but
I didn't think he was that bad.
Who?
Who got starting nose tackle before he got hurt? Yeah, Cincinnati getting back in the preseason.
Oh, you talking about Phil Taylor. That's what I said. Phil was playing well, but Phil Taylor ain't played in a regular season game in like 3 years, man. We can't know what we get out of him.
That's true. I mean, I like upgrading. Don't get me wrong, Lou. I love to upgrade him. I can go get a legit nose tackle that can ball. Yeah. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign me up. But
would you be willing to spend a first round pick on that though?
No.
See, we don't want one that bad.
I'm not spending a first round pick on nothing but a pass rusher.
Okay.
Hell no. Or maybe, you say you will get that out. That position we ain't talking about right now. But other than that position, I'm more spending on the pass rusher. I'm not sure on a running back or receiver on that. It gotta be a pass rusher. Has to be. We need one. We just need a legit pass rusher.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah, it's a pass rusher, inside linebacker, Zach Brown will give you time. And then third to me, I know you said we need a dynamic running back. That is true. We need a wide receiver. He can't create no separation. Only one receiver on the roster can create separation, and that's Jameson Crowder. He doesn't do it consistently enough either. So we need a legit number one wide receiver to move the chains and create separation consistently because we don't have one. Like you said, Josh Dawson runs blind dance routes. Jameson Crowder can only do so much. He's like 5'7". He's wide. He can only do so much. Yeah. And Brian Grant is, man, you never talked to prior. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not getting into that. And everyone else is just okay. Like, they're just okay. They're not alpha males. They don't have that dog in them. They don't do what number one receiver is supposed to do in the league. They just don't do it. You don't have that legit guy. So let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. Your number 1A is pass rusher. 1B is receiver. It's inside linebacker. Inside linebacker. On both sides.
All right, I got you.
Number two would be wide receiver.
Okay.
And then 2B would be running back.
All right, I got you.
I like our running backs. Don't get me wrong. I just say I want a dynamic back though. I want a guy like an Alvin Kamara or something like that who can create something out of nothing. But it's not my biggest need. I think that the offensive line can create a little better homes too. It's a two-way street because of the run game. But definitely number one is definitely pass rush. We don't create. We always have the blitz to create pressure. We always have the blitz. We can never contend 4 or 3 in a base 3-4 set and get to a quarterback. You can never do it.
Yeah.
You never happens.
I feel you.
You put a crappy ass offensive line. You can't do that. That's definitely a big need to me. That's a huge need. Other than that position, we ain't talking about today. We talking about the Q position. We ain't talking about that.
Hey, I hear you, man. Appreciate you calling in, Tones.
No problem, man. No problem, man.
I'm gonna elaborate on that. No doubt, man. Take care.
You too, bro.
All right.
Cool.
So, Tones brings up a great point. One that, a sentiment that I echo all the time. Like, I give you an example. I was watching the Cardinals game this week, and Junior Gillette got a sack. And I was surprised because he won. Like, it wasn't a blitz. He just beat the tackle in front. And now, granted, Arizona's line is among the worst in the league. So, but he got a sack. And you were like, whoa, Junior Gillette got a sack. And it's just not what we do. We don't back quarterbacks. Like he said, unless we're blitzing, and even that doesn't work with us a lot of times. So, that's a big problem. And especially with the uncertainty of this offense moving forward, not just the quarterback position, but the receiver position, the running back position, all of those things. With all that uncertainty, the defense is going to have to step up. And you need guys that can get to the quarterback. And right now, we just don't have that guy, And I know Ryan Kerrigan's going to the Pro Bowl. And I told you, we're going to look up at the end of the season. He's going to have 12.5 sacks. And everybody's going to be, oh, my God, Ryan Kerrigan's killing it. And if you look at his career stats, they're phenomenal. But as Redskins fans, we know what Ryan Kerrigan is. He is what Brian Orakpo was for us, and we complained about it for years. The only difference with Kerrigan is at least he was getting sacks in the division. He was making plays against divisional foes. That was the difference. Brian Orakpo would get 10.5 sacks, and 4 of them would come against the Rams, and 3.5 more would come against the Raiders. And then the next year, we'd play the Titans, and he'd get 2.5 versus the Titans. He'd get another 2.5 versus the Rams again because we'd play them because we were in last place, and they were in last place every year. And then he'd get another 2 against Tampa. He'd get 1 against the Jaguars, and then he'd get another one against the Colts. And you'd be like, well, where are your NFC East sacks? Where are the sacks that matter? Where are the sacks against the Cowboys and the Giants and the Eagles? And there wouldn't be any. And so he'd get the most unimpactful sacks. At least Kerrigan does sack teams in the division. At least Kerrigan does make plays against teams in the division. Remember, he had a pick 6. Granted, it was tipped. Doesn't matter. He had a pick 6 versus the Eagles in week 1 of the season. A big win last year when we were trying to make the playoff push. Remember, he had a backup right tackle in front of him and Big V. But it didn't matter. He got like 3 sacks in that game, and 1 came at the end of the game when the Eagles were driving down the field to try to win the game, and he sacked Wentz, and that put it into that game. And he had meaningful. He gets sacks at meaningful times in games sometimes, but on most third downs, you're not saying, "All right, Kerrigan, get to the quarterback." You're not expecting him to get there. When he does, it's a pleasant surprise. But we need a guy that we expect to hit home. We need a guy that other teams are preparing for week in and week out. All right, we got to find a way to block this guy. We got to dedicate an extra man, whether it's chipping or whatever the case may be. We've got to find a way to not let this guy wreck our game plan. We don't have that kind of player on defense right now. Got a call, going to take it real quick. You're on the Redskins Report live with your man Louie T. Who am I speaking with?
Ryan.
What's going on, man?
Not much. I'm just thinking, what you're saying about like Kerrigan, like Preston Smith is like the exact same thing, almost completely. Like you'll see the game like he did against Arizona, and then like one or two more games, and then that's the stats.
Yep.
So, but you're gonna see this team, and he's gonna have like one more good game against like New York or someone else, and then they're gonna be like, oh, well, guess we gotta keep him. Maybe he'll carry this over to next year. Like they'll do that, and just I don't know. They're just he isn't the answer. He's good, but he's not the answer. He's not constantly getting pressure. He'll do good beginning of the year, quiet down, get one good game, and then all of a sudden, like, he's the guy again.
Yeah. That's been one of my biggest complaints of our roster, especially at defensive end, running back. There's no diversity. I've said this at linebacker, outside linebacker for the longest time, that they keep drafting guys that look like the guys we already have. I thought last year was a prime example of them kind of doing the same thing with Ryan Anderson. He's been a huge disappointment, and I could look at him and tell he's already a guy on his team. His name is Preston Smith. He's already a guy on his team. His name is Ryan Kerrigan. He's already a guy on his team. His name is Trent Murphy. Like, he wasn't any different from the pass rushers we had on his team, which is why I couldn't, for the life of me, understand why we thought it was a good idea to draft Ryan Anderson. So I agree with you. They're all one and the same. They do the same thing. They have the same
Ryan
impact.
Anderson is depth. That's all he is. Then I don't understand why we went that second round. Maybe like second round corner, second round D line too. Again, I don't know. Like maybe running back. Heck, which then the linebacker. So we should have got a linebacker fourth round, and then just I don't know.
Yeah,
and then
I feel you.
We get rid of Breland. We're probably going to put Fuller out with Norman, which leaves who knows in the slot. Or we'll put Dunbar and Moreau out there. But I feel like we'll put Moreau out over Dunbar just because we kind of draft pick on him. And that's probably going to be a problem with Dunbar.
Yeah. I think they're going to, if Breland's not back, I think the first guy that's going to get a shot at it would be Dunbar, but it wouldn't shock me if Moreau got an opportunity. Like you said, they spent a draft pick. They really like him. And so it wouldn't shock me in the least if that guy to get the first crack next year as starting opposite of Norman is Moreau. But every time something happens to Bree, the first guy in is Dunbar. So I'm thinking that right now, Dunbar would be the first one to get a crack at it. And after, and again, it's going to be a competition in camp. I think that's one of those ones we'll look at and we'll analyze over the summer as to who will be starting opposite. And again, that's assuming Breland isn't back. I don't think he's going to be back, but you never know. You know, maybe the market isn't hot for Rashad Breland and we're able to get him on the cheap. I doubt it. The cornerback market is one of those that you got to get it early. It dries up fast. There are not a lot of elite ones that hit the market. He's a guy that plays good ball, and I think someone's going to sign him in the offseason. So.
Also, with running back, we only have 2 games left. So this is going to determine whether we roll P. Ryan and Thompson next year, because we're trading Robert Kelly. We're not keeping him. We're not keeping two guys with the same build, same kind of same reason they're on the team, and one of them keeps getting injured. We're not going to keep him. We're going to trade him. I don't know for what. We'll probably be stupid. We'll probably try to trade him and give like a 7th-round pick for him or something. But he could probably be a 5th or something like that. But so then you're looking at it in like 2nd to like 4th round, like if we should get a running back. And then one guy I think that's good for that is Bryce Love, because when you look at his highlights, you don't see many of those like highlights where he runs 60 yards to the house, but the entire lane was open. You see like 15, 20-yard runs that were broken tackles, like just making his own and running throughout everything.
Is this the running back from Stanford?
What?
Is that the running back from Stanford?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one with Christian McCaffrey last year.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he's good, and like he does not have big holes to run through. Like he makes his own, and so I just think that'd be good. Like when you see P. Ryan, he had like 4 yards on like every side of him, and he had like 3 yards before he got hit.
Let me ask you this: What do you deem the Redskins' biggest need?
What did you say?
What do you think is the Redskins' biggest need?
Biggest need, pass rusher 100%. Preston is not consistent, so is Kerrigan. Gillette's going. He already told us that. He doesn't want to stay. Trent Murphy looks like he wants to stay, so we'll probably get him just because he'll take a pay cut for the team. So, pass rusher 100%.
Okay. Appreciate the call, man. Really do.
All right.
All right, have a good one, man.
See ya.
So he basically echoed, what we've been saying, and that's this team lacks diversity at some key positions. And that's the thing that we harped on last week, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it this week, but it's drafting a specific player that looks like guys on this roster. I mean, that's like buying chocolate ice cream, and then you go to the store and you buy cookies and cream ice cream, and then you go back to the store and you've already got chocolate ice cream and cookies and cream ice cream, and then you go back to the store and you buy more chocolate ice cream, but of a different kind, like what are they called? Something tracks. I hate chocolate ice cream or chocolate just about anything. So, but you get what I'm saying. Like, really? You just went, how much chocolate do you need? You already got chocolate. Go buy some different flavors. We just don't do that. And that I don't understand. But got another call. Going to take it. You're on the Redskins Report live with your man, Louie T. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, what's up, Lou? This is John Perez. You're one of your loyal fans of the show.
Hey, what's going on, John?
I'm good. I'm just relaxing right now, just eating dinner. You said the question you asked everybody is the Redskins' biggest need in this offseason?
Correct.
All right. I think I want to say receiver because I like Josh Doxson, but he still needs development. Terrell Pryor's obviously good as gone, but I think our biggest need is pass rusher because we didn't get a lot of production out of Junior Gillette this year. He's already said that he's gonna go in free agency. So what are your thoughts on? So I think we could go get pass rush. From what I'm hearing, what are your thoughts on Muhammad Wilkerson possibly hitting free agency next year? Because the Jets because there's a report that the Jets don't want to keep him, that they're done with him, they're tired of his antics with the coaching staff. For some reason, he's been late to some of his meetings. What do you think about the Redskins possibly making a trade for him, or possibly if the Jets release him, we could probably sign him to get him to take a pay cut or something like that?
Well, I don't have a problem with Muhammad Wilkerson, especially as a player, but again, it's about a culture that the Redskins are trying to set. I mean, they've always made it a priority to try to get guys that are not only good football players, but guys that are good off the field as well. If he's having issues with professionalism in New York, I don't think that's something that they want to bring into their locker room. I mean, it's one thing if he had disagreements with the coaching staff about how he was being used and playing time, this, that, and the other. Then you could understand that and you say, hey, maybe a fresh start for this guy is what he needs. But when you've got a guy that's showing up to meetings late and he's habitually late and it's a problem to the point where you have to suspend him, I don't know if that's something that you want to necessarily bring into your locker room and have that headache on your plate. Now, again, that's where as a staff, as an organization, you have to do your homework. You need to talk to people and find out exactly what's going on, get to the crux of the problem and see if you bring him on board, if it'll be the same thing. I mean, it's similar to the Deshaun Jackson situation. When he became free, you remember there were so many reports out there. He's in gangs. He's got gang ties, and he's this, he's that. He's a malcontent. He's a coach killer, quarterback killer, this, that, and the third. And then when we got him, he wasn't that big of an issue. Now, there were some issues going on behind the scenes, but it wasn't anything that was really disrupting the chemistry of this team. So you just got to do your homework on the guy. But even Muhammad Wilkerson, he's still an interior pass rusher. He's not an edge rusher. So even with the guy like Wilkerson, look, you'll take pass rush wherever you can get it. It doesn't matter where it comes from. You just want it. But we still lack an edge presence. He's an interior guy. He's more of, a 5 technique in the 3-4 scheme. And when you've got an even front in nickel, he's still a defensive tackle. He's still one of your 2 down linemen inside. So we're still looking for a guy that can be a consistent quarterback sacker from the outside, as an edge presence. So I wouldn't mind Wilkerson coming on to the team because I know the dude is talented. The question then becomes, is he a malcontent? Is he a guy that you can bring in and not have any problems with? And can he assimilate to this locker room and be drama-free? Because that's one thing. We're not a good enough organization. Like if we were the Patriots or the Seahawks or one of those types teams where you could bring a guy in that's had a checkered past and say, hey, look, we've got a culture here developed already. Either you can conform or get the hell out. Then I would love to bring him in. If I were the Patriots, I'd love to take a flyer. And they've seen him 2 times a year for the last 6 years or so. So they know how good he is. It wouldn't shock me if he went somewhere like New England. But we're not a good enough organization. We're not a good enough franchise to invite someone else's problem to our locker room because we don't do a good enough job of handling our own stuff. So we can't take on somebody else's headache and bring them here and expect them to conform because we don't win enough for that. The one thing that keeps players in line is winning. You say, hey, look, we win here. So we know how to do it. So either you do it the way we say do it, or you can take your ass somewhere else. The problem is we don't have that established in D.C. We're trying to establish that culture as we speak. So someone's coming in here and they're like, what have you won? What have you done lately? And this is the Janet Jackson League. I tell you all the time, what have you done for me lately? Do, 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 do. Ooh, yeah. We haven't done anything lately. So he's coming in here like, hey, I'm looking at y'all looking at me. I'm telling you I want to do it this way. You saying you need to do it that way. Why? Why should I do it your way? Other than you signing my checks. But that hasn't mattered to him, obviously, in New York, so it's not going to matter to him here. Because we're similar to the Jets in that we haven't won, they haven't won, and they don't have a culture of winning. And so at least they've been to an AFC championship game more recently than we have. They've been to the AFC championship game, I think, twice under Rex Ryan, or at least in like 2007 or something like that with Mark Sanchez. We haven't been to.
I think it was 2009 and 2010 when they went to the AFC championship.
Something like that.
One against the Colts, the other against the Patriots.
Yeah, something like that. Well, yeah, something like that. In any event, you're right. They've been a lot more recently than we have. So, again, I don't know. I'd love to have him on board if they feel like he's a guy that they can handle in the locker room. I just don't think we can.
I think the thing with Muhammad Wilkerson is he needs to change his scenery. That Jets franchise has been a mess for as long as I can remember, since the Joe Namath days. But even though he may be a little bit of a problem in terms of listening to authority. I would like to have him as a football player. Not sure about the other stuff. Okay, next thing. I talked about on the last call-in about Jarvis Landry coming in into free agency. Do you think the Redskins would be able to afford, because he says he wants big money, do you think the Redskins will be able to give him the amount of money he wants, or do you think they'll, or do you think his, or do you think I would love to get this guy. I don't want to see another team pick him up, because it sounds like the Dolphins probably won't re-sign him. They've been trying. They've done nothing for a long-term deal for him. So it sounds like that he may hit the open market. In terms of running back, I know that's our biggest need. Rob Kelly. It looks to me like Rob Kelly. He's been injured all year long. I mean, I love Chris Thompson. I love P. Pine. I think he's going to get. We need a bruising, big physical back, like a Leonard Fournette or a Dalvin Cook or an Adrian Peterson type guy. When Adrian Peterson was in his heyday, he was like really, really, really good. And I would like to go take a look at a guy like a Bryce Love if he's still available, if Saquon Barkley is in fact available. But I think Barkley's going to be picked top 5. What do you think about getting Bryce Love from Stanford as a potential game changer, and maybe James Washington from Oklahoma State as a potential changer, as a game changer wide receiver? All
right, so let me take your first comment, and then we'll talk about the running back position second. Let me read you this tweet. I've been, doing a little bit of homework on a couple of, free agents, looking at the receiver position, because I told you watching the Arizona game kind of scared me. So I went and I did a little bit of research, and I was listening to some guys talk that follow the NFL very closely, and they're beat writers for various teams around the league. And I'll give you a little snippet of what they were saying, conversing amongst one another. So I'll read you a couple of tweets that I came across. Here's the first one.
Okay.
So one tweet says, a receiver hitting free agency this offseason texted me out of the blue and said, "What's San Francisco like? Man, Jimmy G is a baller." So that, number one, that tells you that football isn't unlike basketball. Okay, you know how guys are linking up with each other in the NBA, they're friends, they talk in the offseason, man, it'd be great to play with you, yada, 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 and then all of a sudden, we got these super teams. It's the same thing in football, It's just not as publicized, and guys can't control it as much as they can in basketball, but it's the same thing. Like, when we got Deshaun Jackson, he came here because he wanted to play with Robert Griffin III. That's how we got him initially. It was like, yeah, I want to stick it to the Eagles, 1, but 2, you got Robert Griffin III. I think I can make a great partnership with him. Remember Robert Griffin III took him out to the club when we were wooing him and was like, yo, you need to come here. They were at the club, and, they took him out to like the Wizards game and all of that stuff. So players do want to link up with other great players. Players do want to play with a quarterback. If you're a receiver, you don't want to go and play for the Cleveland Browns. Why would you want to do that? You don't have a quarterback.
No, you don't want to do
right.
that. You don't want to go take a step backwards in your career and play for a losing franchise
or a team without a quarterback. So, look, Jimmy G's looking like a baller, so a receiver that's going to be a free agent is looking like, hey, San Francisco might not be a bad destination. This guy looks like he's legit. Then somebody else said, it'll be interesting because it sounds more likely than not, to varying degrees, he puts in parentheses, we'll see. He said Jarvis Landry back in Miami. He said that's a near lock. So the Dolphins, and I don't think, and I've listened to their head coach, Adam Gase, talk about Jarvis Landry and his impact on that locker room and on that team. And it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere either, because trust me, they had a chance to trade him during the trade deadline. If they wanted to get something for Jarvis Landry, they knew he was coming up in free agency. And if they didn't think they could re-sign him, they would have gotten something for him. I think he's going to be back in Miami. We'll see. But the guy talking says it's a near lock. And then he says, Devontae Adams back in Green Bay, watch for the tag if they can't come to some kind of agreement with him. Green Bay takes care of their own. They rarely let guys that they want. Remember, the last guy that they let walk that they didn't think was worth the money, and he wasn't, was the receiver that went to Minnesota, Greg Jennings, okay? Usually, if Green Bay thinks you're worth anything of note, they're keeping you, i.e. last year re-signing Nick Perry or Clay Matthews whomever. The list goes on and on and on. If you're any good in Green Bay, homegrown product, they're going to keep you in Green Bay. So they said Adams will be back, and if they have to use the tag, they will. And then it says Sammy Watkins back in L.A. I've heard tag is likely there too. He says the only big name receiver that might be available is Demaryius Thomas, and that's going to have to be via a trade, but he's not happy with his role in Denver, and he's not happy with the quarterback position in Denver. So that's what the market for a receiver looks like right now. Those are your big names in free agency at the receiver position. All of them look like they're going to return to their respective teams. And again, Demaryius Thomas is not even a free agent. You have to trade for him. So of the big names, Adams in Green Bay, probably going to be back. Watkins in Los Angeles, probably going to be back in Los Angeles. And, of course, Landry in Miami, most likely going to be back. I don't see the Redskins being able to get their hands on any of those players. So, again, the receiver market might dry up a lot quicker than we initially thought when we first talked free agency and the receiver position. Now, to your other point about running back, there's some interesting prospects. And with the Redskins winning this past week, obviously for a lot of people, they didn't want to see that because it's going to lower our draft stock in terms of where we pick. But I don't give a damn about that. You know that if you've been watching me for any amount of time. I can care less about where we pick. Just make a good pick where we pick. And so whether that's 11, whether that's 14 or 18, I don't care. Just make a great selection when you get an opportunity to make that pick. And so wherever we end up, first round running back could be on the table. Second round running back could be on the table. You don't know at this point who's going to be available, where you select, and what you're looking at when you select. But Bryce Love is a guy that I've watched for the last couple of years. Watched him behind McCaffrey. Watched him some this year. He's impressive, but I don't know if he's – and I've seen him hit the home run, but it's Stanford. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know how fast he is. Like, I got to see how – because I don't want another one of these guys that is hitting a ton of doubles and singles, the occasional triple, but he's never hitting a home run. Like, we got enough of those dudes. I don't want another one of those guys. I want a guy that is a game changer, a guy that I know can hit the home run. If he gets a seam, you're not catching him. And if you do, it's like at the 2-yard line, and that guy better have not only the angle, he better be a 4.52, 4.47, 4.4 flat guy himself. So I want a back that is a game changer. And Love may be that. Like I said, I got to watch more tape on him. I've only watched him in passing. Haven't analyzed and studied his game. There are a number of backs that I've looked at that I think have that ability. But again, you know, where will we be in relation to picking those guys, and who's on the board? What makes sense for this team? The LSU back, Geis, is a guy that I'm very intrigued by. The Auburn back is another guy that I'm really intrigued by. But again, when are these guys coming off the board? Are these guys something that the Redskins, or are these positions that we deem important, are they in the Redskins' eyes as important to them as it is to us? They may think, well, we just drafted Ryan Anderson last year. Trent Murphy's coming back, and let's just assume that they re-sign him on a low-risk deal. Coming off of an injury. I think it could even be a 1-year deal. Who's to say? But whatever. Let's just say Murphy's back. Just drafted Ryan Anderson. Kerrigan's still under contract for another 3 years. And Preston Smith, we feel like, is still playing good football. All of a sudden, they may not look at pass rusher as a bigger need as we do. So, I don't know. They could look at the running back position. Well, we just drafted P. Ryan. They could say, hey, we really like Capri Bibbs. Come on, really? But you don't know what they're thinking. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say. That's why I try not to get too wrapped up in it. But we need a game changer, John. We really do, man.
Yeah, we do. All right, I got one more, and then I'll let you get to the other callers. And then sometime throughout the evening, I'll call in probably a couple more times. All right, one last thing I'm going to get to is your thoughts on your thoughts on Junior Gillette possibly leaving at the end of the season? He's already said he's not going to stick around much longer. Do you think he could have made a little bit of an impact? I understand that he's just coming off of two torn Achilles tendons in 2 years, and the guy hasn't played much. Would you be surprised if we brought him back?
I wouldn't, but this is the thing. Junior Gillette still sees himself as a premier pass rusher in this league. And in his mind, he's only going to get better not having to rehab this offseason. He's going to be able to strengthen his body. He's going to be able to, because he looked a little light. Looked like he had lost some weight from his New Orleans days because of all the rehabbing he's had to do. And so I think the Redskins looked at him as a guy that wasn't as stout in the run game as they would have liked. I didn't actually see him as a liability in the run game. I didn't think they gave him enough opportunities, but when he was in, I didn't see him getting pushed around or washed in the run game to where they didn't want to put him in. I just think they had him on a pitch count the entire season. He felt like, hey, look, you can turn me loose. I'm ready to go, and he never got that opportunity. And so I think, one, he's been looking for an opportunity to get back just on the field. Redskins gave him an opportunity to get back into the league when no one else wanted to touch this guy because of the legal troubles he was having. Now that that's 2 years removed and he's actually got a year of play under his belt, he's going to hit the free agent market and he's going to look to find work elsewhere in a position and in a situation where he's going to get more snaps. If I'm him, I don't blame him for wanting to see what's out there. I don't know if there's anything out there for him. And he may be in for a rude awakening, but if there is something out there for him and more opportunity, if I was him, I'd take it too because he's not playing enough. And it's not like we've got guys that should be keeping him on the bench in front of him. He should be playing a lot more than what he is. And the simple fact of the matter is they see him as a third down pass rush specialist. And even then, they're not putting him in enough to me. And I think he feels the same way. Like, look, if you're not going to play me, then I might as well go elsewhere and see if I can't get the same amount of money I'm getting here. Because remember, he wasn't getting paid a ton of money here. These were one-year deals that were very incentive laced, and he's not hitting any of these incentives because he's not playing enough. So I think he's going to test free agency, and if he gets anything out there, a better situation where he's going to get more playing time, I think he's going to bite. But I would love to bring him back.
Yeah, I think he deserved. I'm surprised the Redskins took a chance on him when nobody else did. But he should be lucky. He should be lucky. The Redskins. He could be out of the league right now because of what he did, of the stuff he did off the field. That team really needs that. The team needed to get healthy, and we thought that I really was excited for Junior Gillette this year. Because we finally got him back. Unfortunately, he didn't make much of an impact. He had some nice moments, but I would like to see him come back and hopefully get another opportunity. But I think he's gonna get offers from several other teams because I think our defense. Because one of the reasons why we suffered this season was we had a bunch of injuries, most notably to Jonathan Allen, our first-round pick last year, and our defense hasn't been the same since. The guy has made an impact. Was it the first 4 or 5 games that he played? And he was already making an impact. And then when he went down with the foot injury, our run defense wasn't the same after that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with you, John. And appreciate you calling. Let me get to some Twitter and some more calls. And I got a comment that I want to make based off of one of the things that you mentioned too. So you get something else, don't feel free to call back, man. Don't hesitate.
All right. Thank you very much, Lou.
No doubt, man. Anytime.
All right.
John talked about Junior Gillette owing the Redskins, and really he doesn't owe the Redskins anything because the biggest thing is the guy that signed him here. If you remember, the guy that went out on a limb for him isn't here anymore. Remember, he sat down and had a heart-to-heart with Scott McCloughan. Remember, reportedly, they cried together, all right? And McCloughan having the background that he had and the Redskins giving him a second chance or a third chance and Gillette having the background that he had and looking for another chance to get in the league, they sat down, they had a heart-to-heart, and it was McLuhan that made the decision to bring him on board. So the guy that vouched for him isn't here anymore. So I don't know if Gillette feels like he owes anybody here, because the guy that he would have felt indebted to isn't here anymore. So that's probably why you're already hearing Gillette, in addition to his frustration for lack of playing time, snaps, what may have you, and just, possibly just wanting to see what's out there. The guy that brought him on board isn't here. So he doesn't owe anybody anything that's here. So that's something else to consider as well when you're talking Junior Gillette. But in any event, let's check Twitter real quick and see if there's anything there. If not, we'll take to YouTube. And while Twitter is loading up, let's see what we got. All right. Let's take this call. You're on the Redskins Report Live with your man Louie T. Who am I speaking with?
What's up, bro? This is Michael calling
What's going on,
back again.
What's going on, Michael?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you. I know we were talking about what the main needs for the Washington Redskins.
Yep.
Well, my thing is, I think it all started at the quarterback position. I think first we got to figure out what we're going to do with Kirk Cousins. And I'm going to be completely honest with you and be completely transparent. I'm not a huge Kirk Cousins fan. The reason why I'm not a huge Kirk Cousins fan, the reason why I'm not opposed to paying Kirk Cousins a big contract, because I don't think we have a lot of talent on the team. First of all, I don't think we have a superstar player on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't think Kirk Cousins is a Tom Brady, or he's an Aaron the Game Rodgers, or he's a Russell Wilson. I don't think he's one of those type of quarterbacks that you could just throw players on the field and he's going to make those players better. I think we got to have a team around him, or we got to have a couple of stars around him to elevate his game. I just want to know your opinion on that. Do you think by us paying him a big contract is going to handicap the team? Because I just don't think he's the quarterback that you can just have average players. You know how you can take a Tom Brady and you can just throw a couple of guys out there and he's going to elevate those type of guys. I just don't see Kirk Cousins as that type of guy. Just want your opinion on that.
Okay, so, all right. So you say he's not Brady, Breeze, Rodgers. No one's debating that. He's not in that class. No one's ever said he was in that class. And I think that's where Redskins fans kind of get lost in the sauce, because they want to because of the money that he's going to command in the offseason, they want to compare him to the best that the league has to offer. And the only reason he is going to get that kind of money is because we put him in a position to get that kind of money. Had we given him a contract 2 years ago like we were supposed to, last offseason like we were supposed to, he wouldn't be commanding that kind of money. But that being said, he's not Brady. He's not Breeze. He's not Rodgers. He's not one of the a Breeze or Roethlisberger, one of these upper echelon guys. But, I mean, if you look at everyone that I just named, with the exception of maybe Brady and Breeze, and you could argue that Breeze has even had some guys in hell. Even Brady has had Gronk. They've all got at least one guy. At least one guy. Now, Redskins, you could say Jordan Reed. You know, they've got Jordan Reed, but he's not healthy most times. Gronk is not healthy most times. The other thing is, too, though, those teams that win with those quarterbacks, they all have a semblance of a defense. Kirk hasn't had a defense since he's been our quarterback. Now,
I agree with that.
Exactly. So the thing about it is, you mentioned that Kirk can't take a mediocre team and raise the level of play. That's while that is true, most of that is true. Most of that is a true statement. I mean, I look at him this year. What has he got this year? Now, granted, we're 6-8, but do you blame the Saints' loss on him? Because I don't. We were up 14 with 3 minutes left. Do you put that on the offense? Do you put that on Kirk? We scored 30 against Minnesota. The Vikings, who shut the Rams down and held them to 7, shut the Falcons down, held them to 9. The defense gave up 38. Do you put that on Kirk? Remember, this is with the same group of receivers that he's been throwing to the last couple of weeks that have scared the hell out of you, me, and everybody else. Same guys. He put 30 on arguably the best defense in the league. Kirk Cousins did that. They made plays with Kirk Cousins throwing to Ryan Grant, Jamison Crowder, and Josh Doxson, and Vernon Davis. Okay? Now, Chris Thompson was on that team, which he hasn't been lately, but again, 30 points on the Vikings. Should have won that game, but the defense couldn't get a stop. They were horrible in that game. Should have beat the Saints. We put up, 31 in that game and lost in overtime to the Saints or whatever it was. We put up on the Saints. Should have won that game, but lost in overtime because the defense couldn't get a stop late. I mean, what I'm basically saying to you is he doesn't have a great supporting cast this season, and look at the numbers he's put up. He's like in the top 5 in just about every statistical category in the league. And I know sometimes stats can be misleading, but again, we've sat here and talked about the lack of talent at receiver position that scares us, and yet Kirk is still performing. Not to mention the offensive line has been in shambles all season long, and Kirk has had to take his game to the next level. And even the most staunch Kirk detractor has to admit that Kirk's added another element to his game this season out of necessity. He's become a runner and a guy that can make plays off schedule. He's done that this year, something that we complained about him not doing in the past. So if you look at his game, it's continuing to evolve every single year. He's in the prime of it. He's going into the prime of his career. Remember, he's only started for 3 seasons. This is his 3rd year starting. He's only going to get better. And that's the danger in letting him walk as he hits the prime of his career, is that he will play the best football of his career elsewhere. We were the practice team. We allowed him to get the confidence necessary to then go out and ball for somebody else, sort of like we did with Ryan Clark, with Antonio Pierce once upon a time. We let them get into the prime of their career, and then we let them go make their best plays elsewhere. I don't want to see that happen with Kirk Cousins, but again, I'm with you. If it's going to take some ridiculous amount of money to have him back, I don't want to do that at the expense of the rest of the roster. It just doesn't make sense. To me, he's closer to Andy Dalton than he is Tom Brady.
That's my only thing. And when you look at Andy Dalton, he got A.J. Green. He got pieces around him. And my only thing is, I think Kirk Cousins is a decent quarterback. Don't misunderstand me. But I think he needs pieces around him to you know what I'm saying, to help him be the quarterback that we need him to be. I don't think that you pay him, you break the bank paying him, and then we got to go out there and get some receivers like the Jarvis Landry, who's probably going to want $10 or $12 million a year. And now we're talking about we may have a good offense. We had Deshaun Jackson. We had a great offense, then we had a terrible defense. I just feel like there's so many things that we need to do, and I don't feel like we in a predicament just to pay him that much money when we got so many other holes to fill. That's the only thing that I'm saying.
And I understand that. I get where you're coming from, but what you also got to realize is the hardest thing to do in this league is what, Michael? Is what? To win. And what is the easiest? Okay, and what one player on the field affects wins and losses the most?
The quarterback position. You don't have one of those, you don't have a chance in this league. We've got a quarterback that you can win with. Now, granted, like you said, he's not Brady. I'm sorry to...
Huh? Go ahead.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you good.
But what about these teams that has a great defense and that's winning games, like the Minnesota Vikings? They have a great defense, and they're winning with Blake Bortles because they have a good team around him. What about the Minnesota Vikings, who was down to their 3rd string quarterback that was winning? I mean, That's the only thing that I'm saying.
Yep.
If we put so much money in Kirk Cousins, I'm afraid that we're not going to be able to get other players around him to make us a complete team. And I just don't think he's a quarterback that you can just have a super. He's the quarterback, and he's going to elevate. We can just go out there and get some average wide receiver or average running back, and he's going to elevate that game. I think we got to put a team around him. That's the only thing that I'm saying.
Yeah. Now, that point you just made is extremely valid, and one that I've heard Redskins fans echo, and there is no defense against that. There are teams out there like Minnesota, like Jacksonville, like Seattle when they got Russell Wilson. They had an infrastructure built in Seattle. They've drafted well. They developed players well. And their defense was ready to go, and they had a run game, and all they needed was a quarterback. And Russell Wilson just happened to be the missing piece to the puzzle. They inserted him. They won a Super Bowl and went to another one and should have won that. Jacksonville, same blueprint. They've drafted so well. That's the problem, though. The difference in every scenario you've brought up and the one that I just added to the mix in Seattle from the mid to early 2000s is that they all drafted well. Jacksonville has had some of the best drafts over the last 3 years of any team in the league. They're stocked and locked and chocked full of defensive talent. And so all they did was add a couple of pieces in A.J. Boye and the defensive tackle from Arizona and Calais Campbell. And all of a sudden, they were ready to rock and roll. They were ready to go. They were already ready. Okay? And then they had talent on offense. It wasn't the greatest, but the defense is so dominant. And then they were able to add Leonard Fournette because they were still a bad football team. See, we're never bad enough to get a top 5 pick to draft a Leonard Fournette. That's a game changer there. And all of the pieces of the guys that they were able to draft, we haven't been able to do that because we haven't been bad enough. We're just good enough. We're 6-10. We're 7-9. We're 8-8. We're 8-7-1. We're just good enough to where we're in the middle of the draft. And unlike those teams who it's hard to miss at the top of the draft. It's really hard because there's so many good players up there. You just got to pick one. When you're in the middle, and that's why I respect the Ravens or the Seahawks, because even though they're at the end of the draft just about every year because they're in the playoffs just about every year, Steelers, same thing. They're able to find players every year that enhance their team. And it just seems like we're unable to do that in the first few rounds. Like I said, our mid-round picks have been good, but I don't know if I trust this organization enough to fill this team with the talent necessary to not need a quarterback named Kirk Cousins, to be able to win with a Case Keenum, to be able to win with a Blake Bortles. I don't know if I trust this organization enough to be able to say, all right, so we're going to trust that you can allow Kirk Cousins to walk, use that money and your draft pick resources to go out and build a team that we can eventually find a quarterback, insert him, and win with. Do you trust this organization to do that?
Nah.
And I hate the fact that you feel that way and you say that, but that's how just about all of us feel. Like, the reason why, and I'm with you. I think that you have a valid point. Like, you can't be afraid to let Kirk walk because we don't have anything else, but you got to be able to build a team. And if they don't do this, look, they already messed this up to the point where they're going to have to pay him a lot more than they would have had to. They can still pay Kirk Cousins a long-term deal. The thing is, I think he's going to go out on free agent market and get way more money than the Redskins want to pay. And that's the thing. It's not like he's like, okay, what's your best offer? I'll take it. He's like, no, I want to see what fair or market value is. And market value, if he goes out on the market, I've already heard Hugh Jackson say he doesn't think that DeShone Kizer's ever going to get it. So Cleveland is a market where he's going to, now again, I don't know if he wants to go there. I'm going to tell you the team that scares me right now. And if they win a Super Bowl, I can all but assure you that that's probably where he's going. And a caller mentioned this last week. I think he might be going to Pittsburgh. I'm looking at the Steelers.
Wow. Whoa, Pittsburgh?
I'm looking at the Steelers. And I look at their situation, their infrastructure, the way they're set up. And if they win a Super Bowl this year and Ben Roethlisberger says, yo, I'm done. I'm riding out on my white horse. got the Super Bowl. I'm good. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all the memories. I'm out. And they need a quarterback. They're not going to be able to draft one at the top of the draft, and they're not the type of organization that's going to package up 3 first-round picks in a second to go get a quarterback. That's not how they operate. That's not how they do business. That's why they're one of the best. What they're going to do is they're going to tell Kirk Cousins, look, we may not be able to pay you as much as Jacksonville or Cleveland, but I can tell you this much. You're going to win. We're a great organization, and we got all the weapons. We got the defense. We got everything. We got a great back that went to the same school you went to in Le'Veon Bell that you're probably familiar with because you went to the same school. All right, you're good buddies with Antonio Brown. You spend time with him in the offseason. So he can look around that organization and say, man, they do it the right way. They want me. They're going to pay me more than enough. Look, I made a ton of money with the Redskins already. So money may not be the most important thing, and he's still going to get paid a lot of money. Don't get it twisted. I'm looking at the Steelers right now, and I'm saying to myself, we can't compete with them. Even if we could pay him more, we can't compete with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they say, hey, Kirk Cousins, we want you to be our next franchise quarterback for the next decade.
Speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm asking you one more question. I'm going to let you get to another caller. Yeah. I want to ask you about the draft and us developing players. I came on your podcast last time, and I said that I don't feel like we do a good job with developing superstars. You look at us going to get Deshaun Jackson from another team, us going to get the cornerback in Josh Norman. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, do you feel like we do a good job with developing superstars? I look at other teams, and I know it's not a good job. It's not a good thing to look at other teams, but you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they develop wide receivers and how they got wide receivers all over the place. Mm-hmm. I was even looking last week at the Miami Dolphins, and I was looking at their young running back, Kenyon Drake, and it just seemed like to me, why do we have to go out and get a Jarvis Landry? Why we got to go out and get a wide receiver that we got to pay all this money to, instead of drafting and developing a superstar wide receiver or a superstar at the skill position? Okay, so it's another great question by you, Michael. And so we had this discussion last week, but the thing is, this is what you got to realize. Before you can develop talent, there must be talent to first then work with. Like, Antonio Brown was always talented. He just snuck under the radar. So he ends up in Pittsburgh in a great situation with a great quarterback, great organization, and he gets the coaching that he needs. But he was already talented. And once he gained the confidence that he could play in this league, voila, you got what you're looking for. You know what I mean? Same could be said for a guy like Pierre Garçon, undrafted out of Mount Union, but he ends up with Peyton Manning, who then gives him and gets some good coaching probably while he's there. But what better coach is there than Peyton Manning to coach you up, show you the ropes, show you how it's done at a professional level. And then all of a sudden, Pierre Garçon is getting a big deal from the Redskins, and he's a really good receiver in this league. The thing about it here is you take Kirk Cousins out of the equation, and I don't know who's throwing the ball to these guys, but you got to draft talent. You got to get talent first. Like, the guys that we're getting aren't uber talented. So it's only so much you can do with them. Like, I think Ryan Grant has maximized what he can be in this league. And you got to give the credit to the coaching staff. Ryan Grant he's a 5th-round pick. We drafted him out of Tulane as a 5th-round pick. We've gotten 5th-round pick production out of him. Now, Antonio Brown was a 5th-round pick. They're not getting 5th-round pick production out of him because the talent discrepancy is so vast. Like, Antonio Brown is way more talented than Ryan Grant. Like, it's not even worth discussing. So, the guy Robert Davis that we just drafted out of Georgia State last year in the 6th round, he's to me, there's a ceiling on just how much this guy can do for you. Like, you got to get the guys that are talented, and then you got to coach them up. He's got size, he's got speed, but there's more than that to being a wide receiver. And I just don't know if there's but so much there that you can work. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I can look at receivers for the most part. More so than any other position. I can look at a receiver and tell, can this guy play or can he not play? You know what I mean? And like, you look at some of these, and Kenyon Drake, I'm glad you brought him up because
I want the Redskins to take notes on what we need to be looking for from a running back. I could tell anybody that was listening 2 years ago when he was drafted, Kenyon Drake is talented. The only thing that stopped him from getting on the field at Alabama was injuries. Injuries stopped him from being a star at Alabama. And then, of course, they had guys in front of him like Eddie Lacy and Ingram and all those guys that ended up getting in front of him that stopped him from being a stud. But bottom line is, or Derrick Henry, excuse me, that stopped him from being a stud and getting the playing time. But the guy was talented. And like, those are the kind of guys you want to take a flyer on. And so they got to get the talent first. That's the problem is, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about with Kirk. And if you're not going to re-sign Kirk, then do you trust this organization to go out and get the talented football? Because I'm going to tell you right now, we've got talent at corner right now. We got talent. That may be our most talent-rich position on this team. Kendall Fuller, to me, should be a Pro Bowl.
I agree.
If you look at the corner out of UCLA, Fabian Moreau, he's extremely talented, and I think he's going to be a hell of a ball player for us. Quentin Dunbar is very talented. Look what we've done with those corners this year. We got a coach that can coach in Torian Gray. Look at the leaps and bounds and strides that these guys have taken from last year under Raheem, or 2 years ago with Raheem Morris, last year under the guy we got from the Giants, Perry Fuel, that was garbage, and now this year with Torian Gray, and how now Kendall Fuller looks like a totally different player. Quentin Dunbar, totally different player. These guys are talented. I think they're going to be. And so defensive line, I can say the same thing about the defensive line. I look at Jim Tom Sula. Look at the strides that Anthony Lanier has taken. Undrafted out of like West Alabama State or wherever the hell he's from. And look at this guy. 2 sacks last, again, granted, it's the Arizona Cardinals, and they're bad on the offensive line. I get it. But 3 batted balls, 2 sacks, a ton of pressures, and impact on the game against the Cardinals. And he's coming. He's had a sack in the last, like, 3 games or so, or 4 sacks in the last 3 games, something like that. He's playing ball. Jim Tom Sula had our first-round pick, Jonathan Allen, and look at Matt Ioannidis. Remember, he was like a forgotten man after last year. Matt Ioannidis was a beast early in this season before he got injured and broke his hand. So Jim Tom Sula is another guy that I think is a phenomenal coach on this staff. And that's where you've seen some of the most growth along the defensive line and then in the secondary at the cornerback position. It's about coaching, but it's also about talent. Ioannidis was talented. When we drafted him, I said, this guy's talented. There's something there. Jonathan Allen, we know is talented. Spend the first-round pick on him. He looks the part. Fabian Moreau looks the part. Kendall Fuller looks the part. 3rd-round picks, both of them. So you got to draft the talent, and then you got to have coaches that can get the most out of that talent. I don't know if we're doing the best of jobs of drafting the talent. So
I agree. I'm sorry, you were saying something?
No. Go ahead. I'm listening to you, Michael.
Yeah, the only thing I feel like, I just don't feel like we do a great job of developing talent. I feel like the talent that we get, we always got to go and look at somebody else and look at what they got and pick off their tree and, and get the talent that other teams have. And the only thing I wonder sometimes is, why can't we develop talent? Why can't we create superstars at the skill position? Why can't we have a Khalil Mack? Why can't we have a Joey Bosa, guys that we develop on the defensive side, the defensive line, or at the wide receiver position? I don't have a problem with going out there and paying Jarvis Landry $10-12 million, but I would like it if we can draft a superstar, a wide receiver, and turn him into a star, like other teams do.
I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna tell you what, Michael. Jonathan Allen might turn into that guy that you're looking for, but I'm gonna tell you who you need to pay the most attention to. The guy that, to me, is personifying everything that you just said last week, out of your mouth this week, and what you said last week. You want us to develop our own talent. Right. Josh Doctson is talented, but he doesn't have the proper coaching right now. He's not the receiver that we need him to be, because I think there are some coaching points, some things that he needs to do better that from a talent perspective, he can do it. He just needs to be coached better. So here's a first-round talent, a guy that we know can jump, a guy that we know has good hands, a guy that we know can run better routes. I don't think he's running good enough routes right now. I don't think he's selling routes. That's why he's not separating. He's a guy that has everything, and I think he's faster than people give him credit for. So here's a guy that has everything you need in this league to be an elite talent at the receiver position. But he's not performing like one. So to me, here is your guy right here, your prime example of what you're referring to. If this coaching staff can't get Josh Doctson to perform at a first-round level, we have a problem. We have a problem.
And I completely agree. That's the only thing about me saying let's re-sign Kirk Cousins, because we put so much money in Kirk Cousins. And listen, it ain't no elite receiver is going to come and want to play with a garbage quarterback.
Right.
You're not going to get a Jarvis Landry to come over here and play with. You know, he's used to playing with Ryan Tannehill. He had Jake Cutler this year, so I'm pretty sure that man is tired of playing with trash. Right. So, you know, now we keep Kirk Cousins. Maybe we can get a dynamic wide receiver free agent. But my only thing is, when you put so much money in Kirk Cousins, then you got to put so much money in Jarvis Landry. Now you're left with a terrible defense. Now you got to hope that we hit in the draft, because you can't put a lot of money. You can't spend a lot of money in free agents. And that's the only thing that I'm saying. That's the only reason why I feel like, well, if Kirk Cousins is asking for a ridiculous price, then, you know, we got to let him walk.
Well, I can tell you this much, Michael. And, hey, man, I really appreciate you calling in, man. This is the second week you've come with some heat, man, and I appreciate that.
No problem, bro. Thank you for having me.
No doubt. So to piggyback off of what Michael was saying, this is the thing. If you do, let's say you do find a way to reach a long-term deal with Kirk. Let's just go with that premise for right now. And let's say it's and we've got one of the best capologists in the league, all right? So I don't ever worry about the numbers. You know, our man can make the numbers dance. So I don't ever worry about that, because Eric Schaefer is among the best in the league. When you tell Eric, all right, man, here's the numbers, here's the contract, figure a way to make it work so that we can do what we need to do, Eric's going to make the numbers dance. So I don't worry about the numbers. But let's say Kirk signs a deal, and we're just going to go with just basic numbers, all right? 5 years, $150, 100 guaranteed. So $30 million a year, right? But his cap number isn't going to be $30 million every year. They're going to make that cap number something that the Redskins can stomach, and it's going to probably be somewhere in the vicinity of 12 to 15% of the Redskins cap, which is the going rate for a starting NFL quarterback. So let's say that we pay Kirk that money, and let's say you get a receiver in free agency, and I don't see that happening either, just like I don't see Kirk signing here long term. But let's continue with this premise since we're going down this road. And Michael kept saying Jarvis Landry, so let's go with that, even though I just read you a tweet from a guy that I think has some intel that Landry isn't going anywhere. And I don't think, and I told you, if they didn't trade him during the trade deadline, just like they did Ajayi, if they didn't think they could re-sign Landry, didn't think they were going to, then they would have gotten something for him during the trade deadline. No one's trying to allow first and second round picks to walk away for nothing when you know you can get something. There's value in that player. You're not going to let him walk away for nothing, right? So I think Landry's going to be back in Miami. And he may not even have a choice. Again, if I want you back, I have the franchise tag. You don't get to say what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. I can put this franchise tag on your ass, and you're not going anywhere. So if they want Landry back bad enough, franchise tag, where you going? Let's work out this long-term deal, man. Stop playing. So I said all of that to say this. If you spend big money on Kirk, if you spend big money on Jarvis Landry, you know what you have to do then? And Michael referenced this, but we need to do this anyway. Forget about whether we spend money on free agents or Kirk or whatever. You need to start hitting in the draft. You know what hitting in the draft does for you? It gets you low contract talent, low money, affordable talent. That's how you win in this league, by hitting in the draft, because every team's got 7 or 8 big money players on their roster. The rest of those guys are working off of rookie deals or modest free agent contracts. Okay? But some of your best players are working off of rookie deals looking to get paid. And then as you cycle out the guys that are working on big contracts now, by the time that their contract is up, that rookie that guy that's playing on a rookie deal that's looking to get paid, now you can push some of those older contracts out the door and re-sign some of the talent that you drafted. And now you got to keep these crops of rookies coming in, these rookie deals coming in. That's why it's imperative that you don't miss in the first round, especially the first round. That's why you can't miss in the first round, because you get an extra year on the deal in the first round. That's why we've been so crippled over the last few years because of the Robert Griffin III trade and not having first round picks, because those guys are on 5-year deals if you decide to pick up that 5th-year option. So now, instead of you saying, hey, Khalil Mack, we love you, bruh, but we got to pay Derek Carr first, guess what you can do? Derek Carr's a 2nd-round pick. We need to sign him first. Hey, Khalil, we're going to pick up this 5th-year option if that's cool with you. Really don't matter if it's cool with you or not. We're going to pick up this 5th-year option. So we got an extra year of you on your rookie deal, and now we got the space to pay you when we need to pay you, because we don't have to pay anybody now. We already got Derek Carr out of the way. We already got Kelechi Osemele out of the way. We already got Rodney Hudson out of the way. So now we got all those guys out of the way. We put you off for an extra year because we signed you as a rookie in the first round to a 5-year contract, because that's the going rate for a first rounder. 5th-year option. Now we can pay you with your deal up in that last year instead of a 4-year contract as a rookie in any other round other than the first round. So the reason the Seahawks have been good for so long is because they do a great job of finding hidden gems, and they do an even better job of making sure that they keep their roster stocked with young, talented football players. And so by doing that, for the longest time, Russell Wilson was performing like one of the best in the league, but he was on a rookie deal. He was on a rookie. He was getting paid peanuts. So when they finally said, all right, time to pay Russell, they looked around and they said, hey, we would prefer not to pay Russell, but we can pay Russell because we got a lot of guys. Because remember, they were shelling out money to all of those defensive stars. They paid Chancellor. They paid Sherman. They paid Thomas. They were paying everybody. And they didn't have a lot of money left. So they had to rely, and that's part of the reason why their offensive line stayed. But in any event, let's get to another call. You're on the Redskins Report live with your man Louie T. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, Lou, it's Sean again.
What's going on, John?
Hey, I just, I'm sorry, I'm in the car right now. I'm good, but I got a couple of questions about, I know you don't want to talk quarterback yet because we still got to get the Kirk Cousins thing worked out. I want to know your thoughts on this year's quarterback class in the draft and free agency. I'm going to drop a couple of names for you. First one is Teddy Bridgewater. The other one is Mason Rudolph from Oklahoma State.
Okay. Teddy Bridgewater is an interesting case because Teddy Bridgewater wasn't what you would call elite, nor was he even, to me, Teddy Bridgewater wasn't even good enough to be considered middle of the pack. Alex Smith is the Mendoza line for me. That's the cutoff of quarterbacks that you can win with. Now, granted, if you got an elite defense like Minnesota does, you can circumvent any issues that you have potentially at the quarterback position, which Case Keenum has been playing his ass off. I don't want to discount what he's done this year, but it's Case Keenum. I can't state that enough. It's Case Keenum. Granted, at some point I've got to stop saying that, but 1 year isn't going to stop me from saying it's Case Keenum. I've got to see more of it. But bottom line is, I looked at Teddy Bridgewater, and before his injury, they were expecting him to take a quantum leap in that third season because Teddy Bridgewater had been mediocre at best before the injury. I mean, you look at his career numbers, he's thrown 18 touchdown passes and 15 interceptions in his career. That's career stats. Like, Teddy Bridgewater hasn't lit it up in the league. He's been very average to subpar throughout his career. And the Vikings defensively have been good behind him, and so it's been enough. So I don't know what to make of Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater is a franchise quarterback or not. I think the jury's still out, which is why the Vikings didn't pick up the 5th-year option, because remember, they traded back into the back end of the first round, 32nd pick overall, to draft Teddy Bridgewater so they could have that fifth-year option on Teddy Bridgewater, but they elected not to pick it up because they didn't want to pay him the type of money that they were going to have to pay him on that last year of the deal because they don't know what he is as a quarterback. So the jury's out on Teddy Bridgewater. I can tell you this much. I wouldn't love the Redskins signing him. I would seriously be in wait-and-see mode. I would not love that signing. I would be very skeptical, and I would really have to look at his play throughout the preseason and really determine if I love the move. But I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater is a guy that I would want the Redskins to go after. But that's just me. He's going to be a quarterback that someone's going to be eyeballing this upcoming offseason. And if I'm Cleveland, maybe Teddy Bridgewater is the guy for me. You know what I mean? Maybe he can run Hugh Jackson's offense. And I think they're building a monster defensively in Cleveland. And maybe Teddy Bridgewater is the perfect quarterback for what they're trying to do in, say, Cleveland. But for us, our defense isn't good enough. We need a quarterback that he may not be a Brady, a Rodgers, a Breeze. Again, you're not going to find those guys just walking the streets, obviously. But we need a guy similar to Kirk Cousins that if you give him enough time and if you give him enough weapons, he can throw for over 4,000 yards. He can throw for almost 30 touchdowns, keep the interception number down, and give us a chance to win. That's what Kirk Cousins does. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's what he does. And I don't think Teddy Bridgewater can do that. I told you, I think he's the black Alex Smith. That's what I see him as. And even Alex Smith is playing out of his mind, or was earlier in this season. But that's not what Alex Smith has been throughout his career. So to your Teddy Bridgewater comment, I wouldn't be a huge fan of that move for the Redskins. As far as Mason Rudolph is concerned, have never really been that impressed with him at Oklahoma State. I think he's been good, not great, in a conference where it's not hard to be great because they don't play a ton of defense. In the Big 12, you can light that conference up pretty easily. We've watched Oklahoma quarterback Baker Mayfield do that all the way to a Heisman Trophy. We've seen a number of other quarterbacks put up cartoonish numbers in that conference, only to come into the NFL and not be as good. Mason Rudolph looks the part. I don't think his arm is as strong. I don't think he's as accurate. I don't think he's that mobile. There's a lot of things that I don't love about Mason Rudolph. But again, I've got to watch more tape. I don't want to be too judgmental before I actually sit down and study him. I've seen a lot of him in watching other guys, but Mason Rudolph is a guy that you're not going to have to spend the first-round pick on. You may not even have to spend a second-round pick on. You may be able to get Mason Rudolph in the mid-rounds, third or fourth round. So could he be a mid-round steal for somebody? Absolutely. Could he be a Redskin? Maybe. You know, again, I'd like to think that Jay Gruden can get a guy like a Mason Rudolph and turn him into a solid NFL quarterback. But again, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. I got one more name I want to ask you about. Eli Manning. There's been rumors that his days in New York are done. Would you like to see Eli Manning in a Redskins uniform?
Absolutely not. There's nothing Eli Manning can do for us. He is a guy that is in the twilight of his career, and he is one of those players, like his brother, he needs a defense. Now, remember, when Peyton left to go to Denver, he was coming off the neck injury, and so nobody really knew what he had left. And remember, he ended up going there and setting the NFL record for most passing touchdowns, most yards, all of that good stuff with Denver in 2014. Now, they lost the Super Bowl that year, but then they won it the next year, and he was god-awful, and he had another injury, and he could barely throw the football, but the defense was so dominant. That's what Eli needs at this point of his career. Eli can still help a team, but they got to be one piece away. They got to be a quarterback away. We're not a quarterback away. We've got a lot of work to do to build this into a Super Bowl contending team. And Eli Manning isn't going to take us over the top. So a guy like Eli Manning, to me, would be a very bad move for a franchise that really we need a young quarterback. I don't want any retreads from anywhere else unless it's a young guy. You know, I've taken A.J. McCarron from Cincinnati, and I don't want A.J. McCarron. I'm just saying if the Redskins identified A.J. McCarron as a guy that they think can be the next Kirk Cousins in this offense under Jay Gruden, fine. He's a young guy, a lot of football left ahead of him. We'll see what he can do. and it won't cost you a ton of money to do that either. So I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I don't want anybody's 35-year-old. I don't want Drew Brees, even though Drew Brees would be a massive upgrade. Drew Brees is like 35, 36 years old, 37, whatever he is. He's up there in age. You're only going to get a few years out of him. And again, we're not one player away from winning a Super Bowl. Now, I take Drew Brees, but I want, like I said, you look at Dallas, you look at Philadelphia, they're poised and primed to compete for the division crown for the next 7 to 10 to 12 years because of what they've done at the quarterback position. We need since we botched the Kirk Cousins situation, we need our version of what they have in order to keep up with what they're doing. And right now, we don't have that because we don't have that signal caller. So getting a guy like Eli Manning wouldn't satisfy what we need at the quarterback position.
Well, okay, so you're a fan of the young quarterbacks they're like 22, 23, 24 years old.
Yeah. Like
an A.J. McCarron type guy.
Yes.
You know what, to be honest about A.J. McCarron, I don't know, what do you think how many offers do you think A.J. McCarron's going to attract? Because he's going to be a free agent. Andy Dalton may very well hit the open market. Sounds like Cincinnati may not bring him back. Do you think the Redskins will come calling for A.J. McCarron?
Anything's a possibility. I mean, at this point now, with the Kirk situation up in the air, anything's on the table. We obviously we don't know what they're thinking or what they're going to do with Kirk. They may be thinking all along, well, if Kirk doesn't sign long term, we're just going to hit him with another franchise tag, which I think would be the worst mistake they could possibly make. But we don't know what they're thinking. But if Kirk is no longer here in Washington, absolutely, A.J. McCarron is on the table. I think that you asked me how many suitors will he have. I can't answer that because there are going to be so many options available. He's not going to be at the top of anybody's list, but I can tell you this much. Hugh Jackson tried to trade for A.J. McCarron during the trade deadline, and part of the reason that Sashi Brown got fired is because the trade didn't go through because he didn't process the paperwork in time enough to get the trade done. So obviously Hugh Jackson has history with A.J. McCarron. He was there in Cincinnati when they drafted him. He's worked with him. Remember the year that they made the playoffs when Andy Dalton got injured, A.J. McCarron had to come in. Hugh Jackson was the offensive coordinator. He's very familiar with A.J. McCarron. So if things don't work out for McCarron in Cincinnati, which obviously his deal is up this year, and I can't imagine him wanting to stay in Cincinnati as a backup. He probably thinks he can start somewhere. I think the first place that he'd be looking would be to reunite with Hugh Jackson in Cleveland.
Absolutely. I want to get to the tight end group. Jordan Reed, Vernon Davis, now Paul. Any chance that Vernon Davis? Any chance to see Vernon Davis sticking around with the Redskins for his career? Because he's a DC native, like Maryland native, I believe. Any chance Vernon Davis? And other thing is, would you like? And are we going to expect more out of Niles Paul, our special teamer, next year? Because I would like to get him more involved with offense.
The biggest issue we have right now with the tight end position is we don't have a guy that can do both. We've got specialists up and down the tight end group. You got Jeremy Sprinkle, who's a rookie out of Arkansas that can block well enough, but he's not that big of a pass catcher. You've got Niles Paul, who they see as a really good receiver that can block, but neither one of his traits to them are that discernible. Obviously Vernon and Jordan are both exceptional pass catchers, but neither one of them can block. So the problem is we don't have a guy that we see as being able to do both really well. But I don't know if the Redskins are willing to invest, because they spent a draft pick on a tight end last year. I don't know if they're willing to invest in a tight end early in the draft, because if you want the running game to improve, really, the easiest way, because I don't think, a lot of people think the offensive line is the problem up front. I actually think the offensive line, while it isn't the greatest at run blocking, they've been more than adequate. the tight end position is where we struggle in the run game to block. Like, I mean,
Tight ends don't block.
our tight ends don't block at all. So the question then becomes, are you willing to invest in an early round tight end? Because in order to get a tight end that can do both, you got to spend a first or a second round pick on them. Like, Hunter Henry isn't around in the third round. Hunter Henry is gone in the first or second round. You know, those types of tight ends, the guys, O.J. Howard, he's gone in the first round. Those guys don't hang around. So if you're gonna get, and a name that I've been hearing a lot of is Troy Fumagalli for Wisconsin, is a guy that can do both in this upcoming draft at the tight end position. Again, you're gonna have to spend probably a second round pick on him to get him. Are we willing to spend a second round pick on a tight end? I don't know. With all the needs that we have, I don't know if that's something that the Redskins will even entertain. So maybe they'll look to just go out and get a guy that, and that's why I had a problem with them getting rid of Derek Carrier. Was he the best blocker? No, but he was better than what we had. So, but we just didn't have enough roster spots. So it is what it is. They've got to figure something out at the tight end position, because if you're not going to get a dynamic back that's going to make guys miss, then you better be able to block it up front. And right now, we can't do it with the tight ends that we have.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
All right, John, man. Appreciate you calling back in, man. Really do.
All right, I'll try to call in later. I got my girl in the car. I'll say hi.
Hello.
Hey, tell her I said hello. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good. I'm glad to hear from you. You guys take care.
All right, I'll give you a call later, Lou.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks.
Yep, man, no problem. So, there you have it. Got one more call. I think this will be the last one we take before we get out of here. You're on the Redskins Report Live with your man Louie T. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, what's up, man? This is Rodney from Miami.
What's going on, Rodney?
One of the only.
What's going on, Rodney?
Yeah, one of the only Miami. I mean, one of the only Redskins fans in Miami. But want to go reference a few the other callers. I know one of the guys mentioned he wanted like a Khalil Mack and a Joey Bosa, and you got to but you got to understand. Like, people have to understand, like, those were top 5 picks. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier that we're not bad enough to get those top 5 picks.
Right.
We're more of the 12 through 20 range.
Right.
So, a couple of people that I kind of fell in love with, like, at that range, were like the nose tackle from Washington,
Vita.
I think it's Vita Villa.
Yeah,
something
Vita
like that.
Let's just call
the
him.
Man
Vita
is about close to 300 pounds, but he will run. He will. His motor is insane. He'll run up and down the field. Seen him catch I think it was a running back, no, a receiver from Oregon, hunted him down.
Yeah.
Hopped over, hurdled over a player. He's a great specimen. But O'Quinn Smith, the linebacker from Georgia, in that range, runs up and down the field, high motor, mean hitter, and can play in the coverage. So those are perfect 2 players in that range. I like guys from LSU. However, are you really willing to spend a first round pick on a running back that's not a dual all back? Like,
well,
maybe second round, but I don't believe first.
The thing is, we don't necessarily need a do it all back. It'd be nice.
I wanted to ask you. Also about the Jarvis Landry thing. Mm-hmm. I know some of the people that work at Revolution Sports, that's the agency that represents Landry. Mm-hmm. A lot of the Redskins fans that want Landry, they can kind of give that up. I can't really comment too much about it, but forget about Jarvis Landry.
That's what I said.
More than likely
I've
not
talked
gonna happen.
to enough people in the know that said he's not leaving.
I wanted to ask you, if it was up to you, what would you spend your what players do you see in our range that we would pick in the first round, or we could pick in the first round?
Okay. And to I don't think you could hear me, but I was saying that I talked to a couple people in the know. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Oh, my headphones, I guess they were messing up.
Yeah, I was saying, I don't think you could hear me, but I was saying that I talked to a couple people in the know with the Jarvis Landry situation, and they said he's not going anywhere. So I told Redskins fans tonight, go ahead and wrap that up. He's not going anywhere. And I pretty much went down the list of some big free agent names at the receiver position, and for the most part, none of those guys are going to be going anywhere for the most part. And I talked about that tonight, but Jarvis Landry was at the top of that list. He's going to be back in Miami, but I don't know what I am looking for because, you know, we got to go through, and you know, with free agency first, we got to go through the process because, you know, I got to watch the tape, but then, you know, you want to see these guys live, and, you know, the combine will be the first time for a lot of us seeing these guys, and you got to go through the whole process. Some of these guys are going to shoot up draft boards. That's why I don't like making projections this early, because guys that are projected to go 12 through, let's just go with the number you threw out, 12 through 20, which is where we're going to end up anyway because of our record. We could be looking at a guy that's projected to go mid-first round, and after his combine workout and he tests at his pro day, he could end up being a top 10 pick. There could be a guy that we could be looking at and saying, hey, man, we might be able to get him in the second round. And all of a sudden, pro day, combine, they love him, they talk to him, they think this guy, they watch the tape, they love this guy. All of a sudden, a guy like, remember Hassan Reddick is a perfect example. You remember Hassan Reddick from last year? Remember that? Remember
Yeah.
him? Remember how we talked about, man, we should be able to get Hassan Reddick. Maybe might be able to get him in the second round. And we talked about Hassan Reddick. Then we was like, man, he'll definitely be there for us in the first round. And then he had that ridiculous combine. He lit it up at his pro day. And then they put on the tape. And the more they watched him, the more they put on the tape. And the more they linked it up with his combine performance in the pro day. And they saw how athletic he was. And they saw how versatile he was. The man shot up draft boards. The next thing you know, he went 13 to Arizona. It happens every year. You know, and that guy was a second round pick, fringe first round pick, turned mid first round pick, early mid first round pick. So it happens every year. So it's hard to say what now I want a defensive end. Now, question is, are the Redskins going to continue to play this 3-4 defense? Because, you know, I'm looking at a ton of guys that I think can impact the game, but again, do the Redskins see that as a need? Do the Redskins view, and again, what do we do in free agency? But I look at Clelin Ferrell out of Clemson. I look at Chubb, and again, Chubb to me is more of a base 4-3 defensive end than he is a 3-4 outside linebacker. Because, you know, we love taking guys that are defensive ends in college and making them outside linebackers at the next level. Taking their hand out of the dirt and asking them to play stand-up outside linebacker. Arden Key, top 10 pick. We're not going to have a chance to get him, most likely. You know, a lot of these guys that I'm looking at, you just don't know what's going to happen. You know, Harold Landry out of BC. He looks the part of a outside linebacker, a guy that can stand up, but I think he's more of a base 4-3 defensive end. Again, so how do you see these guys? I got to see them move. I got to see them at the combine. How do they flip their hips? How do they change direction? All of these things matter, and so it's hard for me to say what we should do or who I like the most. I got to watch more tape, but I can tell you this much. I know what positions I want to see the Redskins target. So by listening to you, you're looking for a defensive tackle or somebody up in the front seven, correct?
Yeah.
You're looking for either a nose, and look, if we're gonna continue to play a 3-4 defense, we need a nose. So I would be for a guy like Vita V if we're gonna stay in this 3-4 alignment. If they're finally going to realize we don't have the players, the bodies to play a 3-4, then I wouldn't necessarily want a V. That would change my outlook on this defense and what you would be looking to get. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this offseason because, again, free agency comes first. And the Redskins may decide to make some moves in free agency that changes what we think they need in the draft. So we'll see. But I definitely appreciate your input and your call. You got anything else for me? You over here dropping some gems on our melon. You got any more gems for us?
I got a almost like it's a two-part question. Response and question.
Mm-hmm.
First part, when I look at receivers, because I had this long-going bet with one of my friends a long time ago, and bet $200 on who would be a better receiver, Mike Wallace or Antonio Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, I won that bet. But the biggest thing I look at, of course, catching the hands. Of course, I look at the hands, like, can he catch the ball? But two of the biggest things is your route running, the receiving tree, the routing tree. Because people love seeing like a Treadwell for the Vikings and a Dez Bryant where they're big physical specimens, but they're more of just like a run down the field, now catch a jump ball. And maybe they could develop into something else, but more times than not, they just stay like a straight line, maybe run a post, and a jump ball situation to players. So I look at their routing tree, and a person like Antonio Brown, amazing routing tree coming out of college. And smaller school, small compared to most receivers. Yet, one of the best running backs, one of the best receivers in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Odell Beckham, great with routing tree at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
So players I see comparable, just not in the draft, but out there in the market. Paul Richardson and Allen Robinson. What do you think about those two?
Now, Allen Robinson, if he can stay healthy, and I think being that he's coming off of a major injury, he's going to be intriguing because he's got talent. And I loved him coming out of Penn State, but then I was down on him. He had a bad combine. I put on the tape, and I thought that he had talent, but I didn't know if his talent would be good enough for him to turn into a superstar, be a first-round pick. And I think ultimately he ended up being a second-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah, he was.
I was a little mixed on him because the combine scared me a little bit. And then I said, I'm watching him at Penn State, and I wasn't blown away. I'm like, he's not a first-round talent. But I thought he was perfect for where he went. Second round, Jacksonville, perfect landing destination. And then I thought he turned into an animal when he got into the league. Hands. And the one thing I loved about him at Penn State was yards after catch. Contact. It was hard to bring this guy down. You could throw him a hitch or he could run a slant and it'd be tough to get him down. And you've seen that in the league, and you've also seen that he's got really strong hands in the league as well. Of those two that you named, he'd be the one that I'd look at and say he can turn into a star in this league. Allen Robinson. To me, he has the traits of a number one receiver in this league. Paul Richardson, I like Paul Richardson a lot. He's a complimentary piece. I don't think he's anybody's number one, but I like Paul Richardson a lot. He's dealt with some injuries. He had some injuries at Colorado, has some injuries in Seattle. But he makes big plays. Like, his hands are better than I thought they were. Like, he's made some big catches. He'll go up and he'll climb the ladder. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he'll go up, climb the ladder, go get the football, make some spectacular catches. I've seen a ridiculous one-hand catch this year. He's got some talent to him. And like you said, he can run some routes. And he's not afraid of contact despite being a smaller guy. I like Paul Richardson a lot. I like Allen Robinson more. And I think because of the injury, you might be able to get Allen Robinson a little cheaper than you would have if he would have been healthy this year and had another 84 catch, 1,112 yard, 10 touchdown season like he's been posting in Jacksonville. So he's the guy that is very intriguing. But if I'm the Jaguars, there's no way I let him out of my building.
Yeah. And my last comment would just be hello? Hello?
I'm here. I'm listening. Yeah.
Yeah. My last comment would be, I know people want to look at other positions. The draft, going back to draft. I know, well, draft and free agent. A lot of people want to look at other positions, but other than quarterback, just what more than likely we're gonna stay with 3-4 unless we switch it. That running back and nose tackle, those should be the two biggest ones. I know receiver is looking kind of bleak, but nose tackle and running back. Because look at a team like Cowboys. They didn't have the best defense, but because they had a running back that could do, he could hit the home run. But one of the things that most people forget about Ezekiel Elliott, he just do what a basic running back needs to do: get 4 yards or more. Because if you get that first 4 yards on that first down, 4 yards on second down, you got a third and short on third, doable for quarterback. Unlike the Redskins, where we get 1 yard on the first, 2 yards, 3 yards on the second, you got a third and 6. And you know, teams already know, okay, more than likely they're not going to go for a running play on a 3rd and 6. It's easier to game plan for stuff like that. So running back get those short yardage that we need, get those 4 yards that we need to continue run and keep the defense off the field so they won't be injured so much. And they'll play even better. Nose tackle. Well, since I like nose tackle because I've seen teams like, I focus so much on nose tackles because teams like the Panthers, or Vikings, who when you have great nose tackles and great pass rushers, your corners just have to do the bare minimum. And they'll be leaving with takeaways all day. The Saints a while back, where they had great pass rushers. They didn't have the best defense in the world, but they'll get takeaways because they had amazing pass rushers. And the cornerback, all they had to do was just catch the ball. catching easy passes because the quarterbacks are running for their lives most of the time. So I just want to leave on that statement. Keep doing what you're doing. Love the YouTube page.
Hey, man, appreciate it, man. Thanks for checking in. Another caller that kind of reiterates that, and I think people are really not looking at the running back position as big a need as they should. For me, it's pass rusher first because that cleans up a lot of deficiencies. He kind of spoke to a nose tackle, and that interior pressure. The only thing that quarterbacks hate more than an edge rusher that is disrupting the game is an interior pass rusher that's destroying the game. Because it's hard to run from that guy. If you got an edge rusher that's beating your tackle, but the pocket is clean from guard to guard, all he's got to do is step up. And he can still deliver the football. But if that pocket is beaten, that's why Jonathan Allen and Matt Ioannidis were so pivotal early in the season, is because they were destroying pockets. They were collapsing pockets. And then so when Preston Smith and Ryan Kerrigan would do their little rip moves to the outside, the quarterback can't have anywhere to go. So pass rusher for me, when your interior guys aren't winning or you just need a guy to win, just win. That's what I'm looking for. But right after that, running back for me. You want to, and he talked about the Cowboys. I think that's a great example. But again, we're not, and that was one of his points at the beginning, is that, Michael called in earlier and said, hey, I want elite talent, but you we're not drafting in elite talent territory. You know, we're not drafting in the top 5, top 7 of the draft. We're not bad enough to do that anymore. And I'm glad we're not bad enough to do that anymore. You got to make the most of your picks. The Steelers are never bad enough to do that, but they're not hurting for talent because you got to make the most of your picks. When you get a chance to draft Ryan Shazier, you got to draft Ryan Shazier. They did. You know, granted, he's hurt now, but he was elite, you know, when he played. And when they get opportunities, I'm not saying they don't ever miss. They drafted Jarvis Jones. It's not like they don't miss, but they don't miss very often. T.J. Watt is a football player. Like, they don't miss very often. So, we're not in a position to draft an Ezekiel Elliott. We're not in a position to draft a Leonard Fournette. You know, we're not in a position to draft a Todd Gurley, although we almost were in a position to draft Todd Gurley, and I heard our ex-general manager, Scott McCloughan, say that had, you know, Todd Gurley still been on the board, he was going to take him over Brandon Sheriff if he would have traded back with the Giants, because the Giants wanted Brandon Sheriff really bad. And remember, Gurley was coming off of a torn ACL at Georgia in his final year. And there was a little bit of skepticism as to what he would be after the injury. And I told you, ACL injuries, I don't worry about those, man. If a dude's coming off, like Allen Robinson's coming off of an ACL, I don't care about that. He'll be fine, you know. In any event, he said that if they had traded back with the Giants and allowed the Giants to come up against Sheriff, because that's who they wanted, they would have taken Todd Gurley. We would have taken Todd Gurley. So we would have had a chance to get one of those backs, but we're not that bad very often these days. But with no Kirk Cousins, we might be back to being bad enough to get our hands on a top-tier back. But this upcoming draft, we won't be able to get a Saquon Barkley, who some of you don't think is a generational type talent. I do think he is a generational type talent. But nonetheless, we will see. In any event, I'm going to wrap it up for tonight, man. It's been a great show. Always love when you guys chime in. So tonight, basically, what we've learned from the vast majority of you guys is that pass rusher, running back, and receiver with a sprinkle of defensive line, most notably nose tackle, are the biggest needs for this team. Most of it being on the defensive side of football. I think there are 2 positions that, when healthy, we're really good at. I think, contrary to popular belief, our D-line is actually really good. I think with Ioannidis, Allen, and I really think Anthony Lanier is coming. With those 3, and then you got bodies behind them that you think are quality guys when they're not playing a bunch of snaps in McGee, McClain, and Hood. Yeah, sure, you could upgrade, 1 or 2 of those guys, but I don't think we need to necessarily spend a high draft pick to do so. If you get a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th round guy that you really like that can come in and be better than one of those guys and take their roster spot, I'm all for it. But I don't think we need to draft anybody now. If you're telling me that we're playing this 3-4 still and you want to get a true nose, I'm all for that in the 1st round. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Because you need one of those if you're going to play a 3-4 defense. That being said, I think our D-line, our linemen up front, really good. I think our corners, really talented, really good. I think we have talent at those 2 positions right now, and everywhere else can use upgrades. Receiver, hell, tight end could even use an upgrade. Running back. Obviously, quarterback is probably going to have something happen there. Safety could use another shot in the arm. So, we're not good enough anywhere to just be cool with not taking a player at any position. But we got 2 games left. And then when that's done, we got free agency. And then when that's done, we can really start hammering the draft. And we'll do that And we'll do it here. And we'll see what this team decides to do. But in any event, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Redskins. Got the Denver Broncos in Week 16, last home game of the season. I want to see how some of the young guys continue to mature. I'm looking for Josh Doctson at some point. He's got his work cut out for him this week. Some really good corners. I want to see if he can separate, if he can make some plays in this game. All right? Looking for him to step up and start becoming a first-round guy. I want to see Anthony Lanier continue to progress, continue to make plays. You want to see other guys step up. Anybody that's getting an opportunity, I want to see them make the most of it. So hopefully we get a win. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't, because our offense has been so bad, but we'll see what happens. But in any event, that's going to do it for your man Louie T here on the Redskins Report Live. It's been live talking to you guys, as always. Look forward to doing it again. I don't think we're going to be doing this next week, because next week is Tuesday, the day after Christmas. So you probably won't see me until the final week of the season, most likely. So don't bank on this show airing next week, because I expect everybody to be in something. You know, it's Christmas break. Everybody's off work for the most part. So I'll see you when I see you, basically, is what I'm saying to you. But in any event, we'll reconvene at some point. Don't you worry. Thank you for watching, participating. And again, if you can, please donate to the Louie T Network. That's the way you do it, through Patreon and PayPal. The links are down below in the description of this and every video that I do. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. God bless, and good night.